Show Daniel Woodward, Texas Civil Rights Project, and you are against the bill, is that correct?
That's correct.
You may proceed.
Good evening, Chair Vanderveer, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Daniel Woodward. I'm a policy attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project, and I'm here in opposition to the bill. I want to start by addressing what we were just talking about, which is how unworkable the definition in this bill is as a matter of immigration law. As written, the bill states that anyone who is not a citizen or national, who is not a lawful permanent resident or authorized to work in the United States, is a, quote, person who is not lawfully present, unquote. That definition does not make any sense under immigration law. There are many categories of people who are lawfully present under federal immigration law, but are not authorized for employment and do not have permanent residence. People with student visas, or people who have applied with green cards, or people who have recently been granted various forms of humanitarian relief are just a few examples. And backlogs at USCIS have slowed down the processing of work authorization cards, meaning bureaucratic delays cause people who would otherwise be lawfully present under this definition to fail the definition. The problematic definition is bound to create confusion. Under the bill, people will be required to self-identify, and hospitals, I don't believe, are going to be checking up on it. Everyone, including myself and this legislature, struggles to understand the definitions in federal immigration law. How do we expect a person to correctly identify if they meet this problematic definition? People might know their individual status. They might know that they're like a refugee, but who is responsible for checking it? Is it the hospital employee? I don't think so. So you're going to end up with some really faulty data about immigration status under this bill. And our bigger concern is, of course, the chilling effect that this will have on immigrants of all statuses accessing health care. A prior witness mentioned the impact of trafficking victims on enforcement, but we've also seen numerous stories of immigration authorities detaining and in some cases removing people with status or even U.S. citizens. I myself represent a mixed status family who was detained and everybody was deported by CBP while trying to get emergency care.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you for your
testimony.
time.
Chair recognizes Lynn Cowles. Show you testifying on behalf of every Texan, and you are against House Bill 2587. Is that correct?
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Vandever, Vice Chair Campos, and Representative Olcott for the bill. We do, at Every Texan, celebrate transparency in all healthcare-related things. Medicaid is complicated, as everyone on this panel here knows today, or everyone on this committee. We talked a little bit already in this room about different forms of uncompensated care payments. Medicare pays for some through disproportionate share payments in hospitals. Medicaid pays for some of those too. There's also charity care programs. There's emergency Medicaid in the state also. In terms of emergency Medicaid, I think one of the big issues with this bill, if it is intended to understand the problems of rural hospitals closing across the state, is that the pool of uncompensated care in Texas is so large because of the amount of citizens that are uninsured in Texas. There are the majority, the vast majority of uncompensated care costs in the state come from citizens, sometimes in rural areas, sometimes in urban or semi-urban areas also that go to the hospital and don't have health insurance. And that's because there's 16% of the population in Texas, over 4 million people, probably approaching 5 now, who are uninsured. So that's the key issue at stake here, not the maybe 600,000 undocumented people across the state of Texas who could potentially use the hospital to use healthcare. But like my colleague mentioned, the chilling effect that is the result of these types of policies vastly reduces the number of those people who actually do go to the hospital. And then we see public health crises and other consequences that diminish the health outcomes, not only for immigrants, but for people across the state, citizens alike. We have already heard reported one case of an EMTALA violation, so somebody who went to the hospital and was denied care because they answered that question, and I don't know which it was, whether they declined to respond or responded that they were undocumented, but we have heard one report of that already. And then I know my time is getting short, but we have already heard from our colleagues in Florida too that many thousands of people are just not going to the hospital because of a policy exactly like this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. The chair recognizes David
I got it, Chair.
Chinkachan?
David Chinkanchan,
Chikanchin, okay. Testifying on behalf of the Workers' Defense Action Fund and self against House Bill 2587. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you. Proceed.
Well, good evening, Chair Van Dever, Vice Chair Campos, committee members. My name is David Chinkanchin. I serve as the Policy Director for Workers' Defense Action Fund, and I'm here to speak in opposition to HB 2587. While it intends to identify or quantify a problem, HB 2587 actually creates a whole new problem, or at least makes an existing problem much worse. We have nearly 5 million uninsured Texans in our state. And from the perspective of workers, did you know that Texas is still the only state that doesn't require workers' compensation? On this, we are behind every single other state in our country. And yet, all of those folks, workers and families, regardless of immigration status, will need medical attention at some point in their lives. That does lead to some cost. Unfortunately, this bill focuses not just on the wrong solution, it focuses on a measure that will actually worsen the situation. HB 2587 will not accomplish what it intends to do. What it will accomplish, whether it's intended or not, is to spread fear and confusion throughout our communities and will create a chilling effect. It will keep people in need, children, parents, students, pregnant women, seniors, you name it, from getting the care that they need. Instead of seeking medical care when they should, some will have to wait until they have no other choice or until it's too late. When likely an unrelated condition has worsened so much that it has become life-threatening. And you heard testimony on other bills today that when cases escalate to acute emergency care, that is where some of our biggest costs come from. So while this bill won't accomplish what it intends to do, it will most likely increase costs for all Texans in the long term. I have friends in healthcare who, like me, believe without a doubt that this bill will keep people who need care from getting it, and that morally it would be wrong to do that.
Okay,
So please
thank
vote
you.
no on this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Members' questions of this panel. Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for Lynn, is it Cowles?
Coles.
Coles, thank you. I just have a question about your data. You said there were 600,000 undocumented in Texas?
No, sorry, that's just people who don't have health insurance. So like not spouses, not children of people who have employer health insurance, but
Okay.
probably so that's lower than the number of actual undocumented people in Texas.
So what is the number of undocumented people in Texas?
We don't know exactly, but it's estimated around 1.4 million people.
Yeah. I have Pew Research having it closer to 1.6, and that was
Okay.
in 2021.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Simmons.
Thank you. Daniel, you were speaking about a family that they weren't able to access their care and they ultimately were detained. You didn't get a chance to finish and I wanted to know more.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Yes, I represent a family. It's a mixed status family, which means that the parents don't have immigration status, but some of the children are U.S. citizens. And one of those children had a brain tumor, and she was rushed to Texas Children's Hospital last year. And she was able to travel back and forth between South Texas and that hospital with her parents because she had a note from the doctors saying that her child has a grave and complex medical condition and asking CBP to just kind of let them through at their discretion. And a couple of months ago, she woke up in the morning. She told her parents that her head was hurting and that she was feeling dizzy. So her parents were terrified and put everybody in the car and said, we have to drive up to Houston. They stopped at a CBP checkpoint, showed them a letter from an immigration attorney. And instead of getting this child the care they needed, they held them at the checkpoint for around 6 hours, then brought them to spend overnight at a detention facility, and then removed them to Mexico, the whole family, and never got this child any kind of medical care. And the reason I'm talking about that is because stories like this are exactly why families will be afraid to go to hospitals when they feel like a hospital is a place where authorities might be and access the care that they need.
Thank you.
Members? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2587? If not, Chair recognizes Representative Olcott to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I want to emphasize there's not one single element of immigration enforcement in this bill. And in regard to the immigration attorney, at least I think I took that to me that's what he was. He seemed to want to parse the exact definition of what legally present in the country was. I think most people know what that means. And once again, the person seeking medical care is not going into a courthouse or an ICE facility to where we need to actually exactly define what legally present means. It's a simple question that's being asked, and their care is not being affected. And even if we have those rare occasions where someone might be in some kind of weird loophole that might be legally present but not quite lawfully present, or however he wants to parse it, that's going to make no difference. Basically, they can answer the question how they want to answer the question. And if they don't want to answer the question, they don't have to answer the question. We've already heard from the resource witnesses that we're already having tens of thousands of responses. And so we already are we're getting numbers. And so it's not important that in my opinion, that question has to be worded in some kind of way. Basically, are you in this country legally or not? But it's worded the way it's worded. And this bill, 2587, is modeled after the Florida bill. And as I've already stated, it is going to provide clarification for the Health and Human Services Commission. It's going to provide clarification for the hospitals. We're already doing it. It's something that's needed, and it's going to provide us information. I also noticed that one or both of the illegal immigrant activists that were up here were referring to access to medical care. That is the reason why I feel passionate about this, is access to medical care. One of the reasons I think our chairman brought his bill in front of us is because small rural hospitals are struggling financially. And the question is, and I'm sure it's due to many reasons, but the question is how much of that burden, why is it that 181 rural hospitals have closed since 2005? Is it all because of illegal immigrants? No. How much of it's because of that? I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think anyone does. And I think that's the purpose, and that's the reason that Governor Abbott issued this executive order. I applaud him for doing it. My bill simply helps add clarity, and I think it's incumbent upon us as a legislature to put this in statute, and I ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Collier.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. You said that this bill was modeled after the Florida one?
That's correct.
Okay. Does it say that they don't have to answer the question? Is that in your, do you envision that?
In my bill, House Bill 2587, the two requirements when a patient comes in, and I mean the hospital is required on their patient input form, they're required to, they're asked about their immigration status, number one, and number two, there is a statement on that same form that basically states this will not affect your medical care. And it's basically that simple. And then the other requirement in the hospital is to simply report the amount of care to HHSC.
So if they're not required to say anything, would you have a problem? Because I've seen this on other forms where it asks for your race, and it'll say black, white, not of Hispanic origin, Asian, and then some of them say prefer not to say. Would you be opposed to adding something in there that says prefer not to say?
That came up yesterday in my conversation with the Texas Hospital Association, and I believe also with the HHSC, and that's a conversation that I am going to be having with them because I think that everybody wants clarification. And I think we will actually also want to have a standard because right now, it's my understanding from my conversation yesterday in my office, is that it's not uniform right now, and I think it should be uniform. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be working out over the next day or two while I come up with a committee sub.
Okay.
But thank you. That's a good point,
Okay.
Representative Collier.
And then the information, what is your vision or the intent with this information, the data that you're collecting? What do you think, what is it going to be used for?
I think I'm a former scientist, and I'm a big believer in data, and I think it's going to help us make decisions, maybe not for this session, but for next session. And you also raised another point. There is talk that there might be compensation to border security efforts, and maybe this is something the federal government would be willing to provide money to our small rural hospitals that are actually, if we find out that there's a large amount of money, and I don't know how much it is, but once we find out, maybe that's something that we can request from our federal government to be reimbursed. And I think that's something that would go a long way to help the solvency of some of these small rural hospitals that are struggling right now. Because once again, what's important here is access to medical care for all Texans. And that's something that, and I think I've already mentioned to this committee, maybe not today, but this all began for me back in 2006, it was, in Falfurrias, Texas, where I felt horrible for especially the children in that community in Brooks County, and still today, they have no access to an emergency room right now. If they need to go to an emergency room, they have to, as far as I know, we looked it up right before I came here, they have to drive more than 2 hours to Corpus Christi. And that's not right. They need to have access to medical care. And the reason I was told when I was there in 2006 is because the emergency room that they used to have closed down because of it being one of the more frequented routes for illegal immigration that were coming through Brooks County. And it still is today.
2006?
Which is probably
Did you say 2006?
2006 was when I found this out. And it's been in my mind ever since. And that's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this legislation, because I feel for the community members in that community, especially the children, that they break a leg or, God forbid, something worse happen. And if you're a parent and you realize that you've got to drive 2 hours to take your children to get emergency care, that's not right. They deserve better access to medical care.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Representative Olcott.
Thank you.
And you did close, I think, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Close
all right.
and asking for your favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you. If there's no objection, House Bill 2587 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 2587 is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill